welcome. In this Proof of DeSci episode, I'm here with Albert from Validal, and we're joined by Erik from Bio to dive into Bio V2, the upgrades it brings, and what it means for the future of decentralized science. We're going to talk about how V2 aims to lower the barriers for smaller, more experimental projects, the role of staking access, and whether it truly democratizes participation. Plus, we're going to explore what DeSci Summer might look like. Is it already here? The current market signals worth watching, and how the funding landscape is evolving. So let's get started. Pleased to meet you, Erik and Albert, on the Proof of DeSci Twitter space. And Erik, maybe you could introduce us and the audience a little bit more to the Bio V2, what it actually is.
Absolutely. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Very cool. Well, I first off want to say thank you for hosting the Twitter space, for helping to get the word out, for the interest in the work that Bio is doing, and quite frankly, for helping to push DeSci Summer. Because you're right, I think the Bio token has doubled in more or less the past week, the token price has. And signs are looking like there is quite a bit more room to grow. And quite a few of the Bio DAOs have also grown accordingly, the IPTs, and hopefully some of the assets that we are working towards launching. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Bio, we are a Launchpad and an incubator, have previously been an incubator, is shifting towards Launchpad for scientific assets, be that intellectual property tokens, be that communities organized as decentralized autonomous organizations, or in the coming future, be that agents. So a couple of the things just at a high level that we have seen in Web3. If you think about what Bio is trying to do, we would love to take 1% of, Dogecoin, not actually Dogecoin, but kind of the idea of Dogecoin, and put that towards something productive in the world. I think pretty much everyone who has seen crypto has had the thought, good Lord, what if we could funnel all of this energy, all of this money, all of this everything into something that actually helps people? That's more or less what Bio is trying to do. We have seen some pretty big shifts in the way that Web3 interactions happen over the past few years through projects like Pump.Fun, through Virtuals and others who have pioneered new styles of launching assets, which are geared primarily at small cap launches, which can enable quite a bit of growth, quite a bit of upside, and volatility for individual users who are on a platform. So one of the things that we'd like to do at Bio is figure out ways to better connect token price with scientific outputs, find new funding models for academia itself. And this is an experiment in that direction. So the V2, the version 2 of the Bio Launchpad, is a new iteration where we focus primarily on smaller cap assets. Right now, we are gearing up for the first few launches. We expect them to have a full raise value of $77,000 in Bio, which might sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of a launchpad, most people are looking to raise 2, 3, 5 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. 77,000 is really not that much. We've seen quite a few launchpads do this before us, and their business model on these launches, believe it or not, is actually not from the raise. It's not a question where you raise $77,000 and then you immediately spend that on a project. What most of these launchpads do is put a transaction tax on anything that goes through the liquidity pools that the launchpad has spun up of somewhere in the neighborhood of 1%. And while, the market cap from a $200,000 raise, which is what this starts at, may easily go up to 20, even in some cases, $200 million. The real prize is the trading volume that happens behind the scenes. In that if you have an asset that's made it from $200,000 to $20 million, you probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion of trading volume on that. So then you start thinking about, okay, well, what is 1% of $1 billion? Holy cow, that's $10 million in free floating cash coming right there. And that is something which is a lot more scalable, which is a lot more sustainable, which is a lot less extractive to individual community members and people who are looking to transact as a par launchpad and who are looking to profit off of the science that's being done. That hopefully answers the question that you had. It's Morgan on the other side of the line, right?
It's actually Tom, our head of marketing.
Oh, okay.
Morgan couldn't make it to this one, but Erik, thank you so much for the amazing overview. And of course, like I've received this information previously on the calls with Clemens and the rest of the bio team, and I think you guys are doing a great job at educating the ecosystem and boiling it down and just making it as simple as possible to understand. I wanted to ask you just a quick question: does volatility increase? How is volatility correlated to market cap? Like, is it that the lower the market cap is, the higher the volatility will be? Is there like such a correlation? And I guess that potentially creates a lot of trading fees early on in the project lifecycle, and thus fuel those first experiments and get the money into the hands of the researcher and the engineer relatively early after the launch.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some fascinating dynamics happening behind the scenes here, and thanks for the question, Tom. The answer to your question is yes. I mean, mathematically speaking, a smaller market cap takes less money to move it up and down. So if we're looking at, 1% of $1,000, that's going to be $10. If we're looking at 1% of $100,000, that's $10,000. And if we're looking at 1% of $100 million, well, that's going to be $1 million. I hope I got those numbers right, but regardless, you understand what I'm saying there. So one of the things which I think has really taken over in the world of startups, open source, and hopefully moving towards open science is the idea of trying to build small, or at the very least, to start small. Where for those of you who have been involved in startups or tech companies in the past, what tends to happen is you build a prototype, you build a skeleton, you build the cheapest version of the product possible and see if there are signals coming out of it. Not to say that, you built a cheap product and you've got 3 people who are working on it. That's a guarantee of success. But it's a means of continuously de-risking your work, your time, and your effort. One of the things which is really interesting to think about is the way that these funding models, with very early volatility on small amounts, can lead to a more consistent revenue base for early stage projects where they're not going to make, in the first week, you're probably not going to make $100 million needed to lead the human immunome project. But you can pretty easily get that $25,000, that $50,000 to send something off to a cloud lab and have it tested, to run some kind of computational analysis, which may have been too expensive to do otherwise, to do the first 2 to 3 steps in de-risking an idea, in de-risking a project. And from there, every single time that and this is one of the things that Molecule, one of the adjacent companies to Bio, has been working on, is trying to create a link between scientific updates and token price itself through a lot of their Molecule Labs infrastructure, where as you put information into what's essentially a Google Drive that has been specifically made for this purpose, you put data into this Molecule Lab, and all of a sudden it notifies a series of agents behind the scenes who can go and look at the data, analyze it, execute trades accordingly, makes it really easy to post things on Twitter, to share it publicly, where all of a sudden, by adding a data dump, by having regularly open information that people can see, that people can analyze, all of a sudden, people are more likely to actually put money into your project, to fund science, to push the market cap higher, to trade, to give you money through volatility, and eventually to go past these very first initial de-risking steps into something that's just a little bit further, that's just a little bit more. So as your project grows over time, as your market cap grows over time, so do your funding streams, so do your opportunities, and hopefully, so do your insights about the truths that you were trying to find at the very beginning of your project. So, Tom, does that answer the question?
Thanks, Erik. Tom, over to you. I think you're unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Fantastic. Thank you so much for the answer and the intro to Bio V2, Erik. And can you actually highlight, maybe even in one sentence or maybe two sentences, if you prefer, what would you say are the most important features introduced in Bio protocol, well, in Bio V2, and why and how do they matter for early stage biotech funding?
Okay, two sentences.
Let's try.
We're going to try. Small cap raises. If I had to pick another one, agent infrastructure. I would say those are the two. And I'm going to give you two sentences on each. Small cap raises matter because they attract more people with the promise of additional returns and, quite frankly, more excitement that comes from speculation. Agent infrastructure matters because we can make it really, really easy for any scientist to experiment with launching a token and to actually gain something out of it.
Mm-hmm. I think Albert wants to.
I actually wanted to slightly progress the conversation. I'm curious about the upcoming projects that will be launched. Is it too early to talk about it, or can we ask questions about the projects?
Oh, man. I don't know what I am and am not allowed to say. Oh, let me give you some very generic pieces of information that won't get me in trouble. We are very lucky to have such an incredible ecosystem of bio DAOs. And the first project that we're looking at launching within this month that we're in right now, so August, is a really cool collaboration with a top-tier researcher in their field that is going to do a lot of work funding one of their important studies. And I think just overall, we are very excited both about the potential to test the Launchpad and the potential to help a researcher answer a fundamental question about the world.
Awesome. And what I would actually add to that as well is that the additional marketing boost and the visibility aspect, because what I want to move on to and actually highlight as well is the BioXP model and staking. And the way you earn the BioXP points, right, is through engaging and creating original content on social media. In this case, obviously on Twitter or X, depends how you call it. But we can see, even now, an increase of engagement and threads and original content that people produce and create around bio. But they don't just focus on bio and bio protocol, but on the whole bio's DeSci ecosystem. And I think that's incredibly important to highlight. But I wanted to ask you, Erik, how do the ignition sales work and how they change the game for the project launches, as well as the BioXP staking model?
Yeah, absolutely. So with any of these given systems, it is incredibly important to try and align the interests of the different parties. Bio, as a team, wants long-term aligned community members who believe in the mission and the vision of the things that we're building and the future world that we're working towards. And for a lot of people who come onto a Launchpad, a huge part of what they want to see is an advantage in profiting off of, from Bio's standpoint, the science that some of the incredible contributors to the bio ecosystem are doing. So there's a fairly natural alignment which can be found there. And we took a lot of inspiration from projects like Virtuals, who have pioneered Launchpads before us. Their point system is very similar to the one that we have made and we have come up with, and I think there's a lot to be done there. Their point system gave us a lot of inspiration for what it is that we're doing. So in essence, the way that it works is there are a couple different avenues that an individual user of the platform can take in order to gain BioXP. So in order to participate in a launch, someone needs BioXP and Bio. BioXP is what allows someone to participate in the launch, and it determines the amount of tokens that they can get in an oversubscription model. And then the Bio that they give determines what they actually end up buying. So 2 different points here. For a lot of Launchpad launches, they end up being oversubscribed, where you set a cap of $1,000 worth of Bio. And people offer up $250,000 of Bio to actually participate in the launch. And you get into a problem as a platform of how do we pick who gets to actually buy these tokens in exchange for their bio? That is where BioXP comes in. So we take the overall distribution of bio tokens that were put into the launch itself, and we allow people to spend their bio at the $77,000 cap if it's oversubscribed based on their percentage of BioXP, with a couple caveats in place. No individual is allowed to purchase more than 0.5% of the total token supply at launch. This is an attempt from us to try and prevent whales and large speculators from coming in and dumping on a wider community. And it's also a way for us to make sure that even the smallest individuals can still get a reasonable portion and still be able to profit off of any of these different launches. So that is a look at BioXP and Bio and how both of them are used on the Launchpad. Now, someone gets BioXP through 3 different actions. The first one is going to be staking Bio. The native Bio token is the asset that the whole ecosystem is built around, and when someone stakes it, they can get something called a vote escrowed Bio. VE Bio. That vote escrowed tokens are a fairly standard model within Web3. Would encourage others to go look at it. I believe Curve has one. It's a good reference as well. But the vote escrowed bio basically means that your bio token is locked for up to a 2-year period. And instead, what you are given is a non-transferable token that still allows you to participate in governance and BioXP accordingly. So that is one way that a person can get bio. So you go to docs.bio.xyz. You can learn more about that model. The second way that someone can get bio is by locking bio ecosystem assets. So one thing about the first method is that if you lock bio, it is locked for a period of time. And you determine that period of time in advance. It can be up to 2 years. The longer you lock, the more BioXP that you get. You can stake bio ecosystem assets. So let's say the ValleyDAO token. Or I'm not sure if the Hempy IPT has been enabled yet, but I see Hempy on the call, so may very well be something that's coming in the not too distant future. The ability to lock any of these assets will also give you BioXP. It does not give vote escrowed bio, so it does not give voting governance on bio protocol, and it is also not locked permanently. What it is on a 2-week cooldown. So you don't earn as much BioXP by locking bio ecosystem assets, but you also don't have the same lockup period. The only thing that's required is a 2-week cooldown period if someone does decide to unlock a BioDAO asset. Then the third and final way that someone can get BioXP is by yapping on Twitter. Once again, very similar to virtuals, where as you make threads explaining how the bio ecosystem, the bio launchpad, BioDAOs, IPTs work, you can be rewarded BioXP from a larger pool of BioXP that's allocated on a rolling basis. So that's a look at kind of the mechanisms behind. Do you have any more specific questions with regards to that?
Well, I wanted to see what Albert's got to say. However,
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how how one wins in I mean it's you explained it like in simple terms, but it's a quite a complex system, and there's probably like a lot of strategies one could pursue. I mean the primary goal like is to maximize BioXP, right?
Yes.
And the way to do that, as you said, it's to yap. So connecting your social, can you get retroactive BioXP? Like or do you need to connect socials first and then you need to start yapping?
I think you have to connect socials first and then you start yapping. But I would need to confirm.
A couple of days ago then.
That's okay. No worries. It's never too late. You've still got some time. I don't have all of the details on how yapping works, so I can't tell you that one. I can tell you, you are spot on. The hardest part of any of these launchpad systems is getting the experience points, which allow you to purchase the tokens. It is actually not easy to get those experience points. So once again, the easiest way to do it is locking bio, but you're on a 2-year lock. The second easiest way to do it is by locking bio ecosystem assets, but you don't get as much as locking bio, and you have a 2-week cooldown period. And then the third way is going to be yapping.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this the other day on my Twitter. I made a post about sort of like asking how the yapping algorithm works exactly in terms of deciding like who gets BioXP. And it would be interesting to know. I mean, if you don't have the answer, that's fine. But how does it choose which posts to reward and by how much? Because what would be really, really nice to see is like scientists or academics actually making like really high quality posts and being rewarded for it, as opposed to, jibber jabber phenomenon that happens when people, essentially try to farm a certain point token or XP token in this case. So I'm wondering if you guys have like reflected on that particular topic. Because in an ideal world, you would, have 90% scientists or people with some sort of like research background, like doing the yapping, because then you have ultimately like a scientific ecosystem. Yeah, just some reflections.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting question. So, I mean, going back to one of the first off, I don't have every single detail around that, and even I think that information may not be made publicly available, because the moment that you give the equations underpinning the algorithm, people start optimizing for the wrong things. So I don't have it. I don't know that it will ever be available. But if it is, it'll be probably something about it will be posted on the Bio Twitter, I would assume. Then to answer the follow-up question here, it's an interesting one, right? So in any given system, the definition of a customer is the person who pays you money, where your revenue actually comes from. And ultimately, in this system, and in pretty much any system, going back to what I said at the beginning of the call, the goal of Bio Protocol is to take 1% of the nonsense of Dogecoin and put it towards something positive in the world. In that framing, the customer of Bio Protocol is actually not a researcher. The customer of Bio Protocol is someone who participates in crypto. So it's an interesting dynamic there. Because I think every single person who comes into DeSci, myself included, is here because we genuinely want to see a better world, and we believe that science is the key to making that happen. And one of the most amazing things about Bio is the fact that it essentially is an entirely new funding model, which is better aligned with the attention economy, which is aligned with the principles of open source, which is just generally bite-sized and iterative. It's a very difficult thing to find. But with that being said, it's also important to keep in mind that scientists are the ones who benefit from this funding model. They're not the ones who are contributing to it. So it's a balancing act between the two, where you do need scientists who are excited, who are willing to give the best intellectual property. And we're actually really happy with a lot of the results and the BD that's coming in through Bio. I won't go too far into the details there, but some of the top researchers in the world are in our DMs, which is really cool to see. But yeah, I mean, there's a balancing act between the two. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Erik, I know it's a tough question. I think you answered it really well. And I like that you brought up that perspective of the customer and the researcher. And I guess the researcher is just on the other side of the equation, in this case being the launchpad variable, whereas the more like crypto traders are like the funders and the quote unquote customers. Because people want to speculate, right? That's the intention of these markets, is to put speculation to better use.
Absolutely. And it's always an interesting question. How do you bridge the gap between Moon, Pepe, token, go Moon, and some really dry, boring, precise academic content? And that's something that the entire DeSci space has struggled with for quite some time, I'm sure. I mean, y'all have been here since the beginning. I don't have to tell you that.
But yeah, it's also what, and I'm gonna post about this on X tomorrow. But one thing that I have reflected on is partially, and I mentioned this today, this new launch mechanism is like a force function that'll benefit the whole space, as it'll drive more capital towards ecosystem, like the research ecosystem of like private and like independent labs, potentially also some startups that are more tolerant to essentially like not receiving all of the capital up front, like receiving smaller amounts and working on from that. And so I think this is overall good for DeSci. On the other hand, I think this launchpad mechanism is going to start favoring more projects that have a shorter time to market, because I think traders are going want to see, or token holders are going to want to see more frequent updates and a roadmap that is not longer than 2 years maximum. And I don't know, I'm still reflecting on that, like if that's a good or bad thing, but I think for DeSci, there's always been this demand from investors for proof points, right? It makes sense to have like shorter to market projects, but then what I'm thinking about is like, how do you deal with these pharma projects where you have 5 to 10 years until you actually can get like a proof of concept or something that you can actually put on, let's say, on a marketplace in the world?
Yeah, these are phenomenal thoughts, and I appreciate you bringing it up. It's a very interesting challenge. So I do think one of the positives coming from this kind of launchpad structure is bringing in additional capital and kind of getting folks who are more in this move fast mindset. But I'll also put a different caveat on that. So let me take a step back. I typically see 3 archetypes of founders coming through Bio Protocol. It's biohackers, biotech entrepreneurs, and pure play academics. So your biohackers are the hairdows of the world. They're people who are out here with a brilliant idea and are just looking to try. And they're willing to build a community of people who are interested in just trying stuff. Your biotech entrepreneurs, I think Long COVID Labs would be a great example of this one, although we have quite a few in the ecosystem. So kind of feels, even with the biohacker ethos, it's a little bit much just to pick one. But they will build a community, they will do the clinical trials, they will go through in a more typical, traditional, almost Web 2.5 VC style and try and create some kind of drug, some kind of cure. Then your pure play academics, to me, Quantum BioDAO is probably the best example of this, are doing truly basic research where it might take 5 years to actually get any kind of meaningful finding. And once that meaningful finding is in place, I mean, you're looking at that going to market probably even longer. And this is a question that it's not unique to Web3. It's something that is ubiquitous across all funding of academic research. How do we fund the mathematics? How do we fund the physics of the world? Because ultimately, those are the things that move humanity forward in the greatest leaps. I think it was Balaji who said this. Our understanding of mathematics or the advancement of a civilization can be defined in mathematical equations. So our understanding of mathematics, our willingness to fund basic mathematical research is probably the single biggest driver of human progress, but it's on a 50-year lag. And it's difficult in its own right. So then it gets to the question of, does this push DeSci towards just smaller cap, quicker funding goals? The answer to me is no, actually, believe it or not. So a couple different things with regards to that. First off, if you're doing basic research, your cycle time for funding is about 3 years. So it's not like someone who's willing to just get $10,000 this month and $10,000 the next month and figure it out from there is going to be that drastically different from someone doing basic research. It just might mean that they have to work with a longer tail of continued funding streams and that they have to get creative with how things are done. For some of these significantly larger ticket items, it can very quickly turn into an engine building game where a brilliant idea not only releases one token, but can release 2 or 3. And these tokens can be smaller cap. They can coordinate with a funding agency. I don't know if you remember the old concept of impact certificates that came from the protocol labs, kind of the whole the whatchamacallit, what was that group called? It was their public goods division. They did a lot of work with the impact certificates group, but trying to work with one of the more out there funding agencies, let's say the ARPAs of the world, to actually get a little bit put towards an impact certificate coming from any of these different groups. I think that would be fascinating. Getting these groups to do small microscopic experiments. So for example, with Quantum Biology DAO and Basic Research, they did their tadpole experiments that were the basis for them getting funding from Bio for, I think, less than $100,000. It was like $80,000 to get statistically significant and novel results, which if they had decided to publish in a traditional journal, which I'm glad that they didn't, probably would have gone on Nature. So I think that there are a wide variety of ways that all of this could be structured. I think a part of this is seeing Bio expand the type of assets that can go onto the launchpad, be it something as small as a hypothesis, be it something as large as an impact market. And I think a part of it is us understanding the limitations of the current system and, quite frankly, doing this in a way where we communicate with the current system that we have a new and innovative model and that we would love their support in continuing to push it forward. Or does that at least provide some thoughts to the Twitter thread that you were making?
Yeah, super viable. I'm gonna take it into consideration actually, and see what I can weave in. Thanks, Erik. Yeah, super excited. But also, quick one. What does the light bulb and the sheet of paper mean in your Twitter handle?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the sheet of paper,
If there is a meaning.
there's a meaning. This is an old artifact that I've actually kind of forgotten about, to be honest. If you remember Constitution DAO.
Okay, I suspected it, yeah.
Yeah, so I was one of the core team members for that. And that was actually the first time I ever interacted with Web3 in a meaningful way, was being core on Constitution DAO, which was the craziest week of my life. And then after that, through Constitution DAO, not too dissimilar from through Bio Protocol, we had pioneered a business model, which is one of the hardest things in the world to do. So from that, everybody fragmented, and we were going to buy a golf course. We were going to buy a basketball team. We were going to buy an original copy of Dune. There was a small project. Some dude, his name was Doug. He made a tweet about buying Elsevier. And I've always been a huge open science, open access nerd. So after being core team on Constitution DAO, seeing how all that worked, then someone posts, we're going to buy Elsevier, pretty quickly jumped on that bandwagon. As I'm sure you can imagine, it did not work. It was an absolute disaster. But it was the genesis for the DeSci space as we know it, actually, believe it or not. So the Patrick Joyce was on core team, Paul was on core team, Vincent was on core team, Jocelyn Pearl, Eugene Leventhal, Allison Dutman. There was pretty much everyone who you've seen be influential over the past half a decade, more or less, was involved in that one. So that's what the light bulb comes from.
Nice piece of lore.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. And yeah, I've got this thought and I really want to say it. So just taking aside the launchpad model, just aside for a second and actually focusing on the staking and the BioXP points mechanism, I think and I really believe that what you did at Bio, I know it's still early stages, the V2 just only rolled out a couple days ago, so it's still early stages and we're going to see how it works and what benefits this actually brings to the whole ecosystem. But I think you've brought one of the missing puzzle pieces to the DeSci table, and that is the gamification factor. And yeah, that's going to help onboard new community members, something that is also obviously the DeFi factor, bringing this to DeSci. It's going to be incredibly crucial. And I think what's going to be really exciting to see in the long term is how this is going to operate within DeSci and what kind of benefits this is actually going to bring to the whole DeSci ecosystem, to all the DAOs that are revolving around Bio as well. I think that's brilliant because, you know, bringing this DeFi and gamification mechanisms to DeSci, this can open up the whole DeSci to much broader amount of community members. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. But I wanted to see if you've already received any initial feedback from the community members, from users, or maybe even from the early projects that we're not going obviously to discuss on this Twitter Spaces, but early projects that might be using those new mechanisms that you introduced.
Yeah, it has been floods of content. My Twitter feed is no longer a Twitter feed; it's just bioprotocol. And I love it. It's amazing to see. It has been such incredibly positive feedback from the larger Web3 community and people looking to get involved. I think at this point, last I checked, which was like 2 days ago, so it's probably significantly higher now, we had 125 million bio that's been staked out of the 3 billion total, which is a reasonably significant amount. Yeah, I think as a whole, it's been incredibly strong, positive feedback and can be a huge point of onboarding for the DeFi ecosystem into DeSci itself. And I totally agree with you that it is one of the missing pieces. And it's interesting, right? To one of the points that we had earlier in the call, you've got kind of this customer who is coming in and trading transaction volume, so on and so forth. But I mean, ultimately, I'm passionate about science, and I think most of the other folks in this ecosystem are. This also has a huge unspoken positive benefit for researchers, which is something you wouldn't really think about, but it very much does. So the way that open source works is typically you have someone who will publish a repository. They put it on an MIT or a CC BY license. They make it open to anyone, and they continuously publish updates to the repository. And every now and then they might get some contributors, some interesting folks, and maybe even every now and then they get 1 or 2 high-quality contributors who give a lot of time and a lot of effort to this particular repo, kind of make it a part of their day-to-day life. This constant, iterative, open information flow is a huge part of what has made open source software the behemoth that it is today. We can all be very grateful for Linus Torvald and the Git primitive for helping to make that happen. One of the problems that you see in academia is the fact that there is no incentive to continuously publish in an iterative and open fashion. If you share your data, let me start this one over. The lifespan of a research project is about 7 years. You have the idea for a year, you spend 2 years getting funding, you spend 3 years conducting the research, you spend 1 year getting published. So from the moment that you start until the moment that you're done, that's over half a decade, almost a full decade's worth of time. So you look at the scientific record and it's a decade behind the state of the art. And that creates a series of challenges where people are afraid of publishing their data for fear of being scooped. Their grad student went out into the wilderness of Oregon to study caterpillars for 6 months and live in a collection station. And that is incredibly valuable data. Cost them $100,000 for that data set. Why would they ever publish it open to the world? If they do that, they're going to get scooped. Then in addition to that, you're looking at salami slicing, you're looking at publish or perish, you're looking at even p-hacking and little bits of blatant replication fraud. Having a more transparent and iterative funding model is beneficial for scientists in the fact that they can openly share information, get rewarded for it, and make the entirety of their scientific field move faster, make profit off of the fact that their field is moving faster. So yeah, I think it has the potential to be a huge boon, not only for the DeSci ecosystem or for the DeFi ecosystem coming into DeSci, but also for the TradSci ecosystem coming into DeSci. I think it's something that's really powerful for both sides. So thank you for bringing that point up, Tom. I think that's a really great one to mention.
Thank you so much. And yeah, just before we move on, because we're going to have 12, maybe 15 minutes left, guys, in the audience. If any of you want to jump in and ask Erik, Albert any questions, feel free to do so, and I'll get you here on stage. Erik, before we move on to the quick DeSci Summer discussion, I just wanted to finalize the Bio.xyz conversation, and I wanted to ask you, because on the platform, and I recommend everyone to go and check it out, of course. We can see the data from our own engagement and from our own participation in the bio platform. But what we can't see are the numbers and the data globally. And I wanted to, obviously, I don't expect you to provide us with the numbers here, but I just wanted to ask you, at Bio Protocol, do you think that the engagement users, the user behavior on the platform, the staking amounts that you see globally, are these exceeding the expectations that you've initially had? Or do you think there are some things that you need to work on to convince people initially from DeSci to participate in those kind of DeFi models?
It's a multi-sided question. Has it exceeded our expectations? Tom, we were the number one trending on Coinbase last week. It has wildly exceeded anything that I could have ever believed, which is amazing to see in its own right. Do I think that we need to convince people in DeSci that what we're doing is right? Quite frankly, no, not really. People convince themselves. I think what we need to focus on is building products that help scientists. And ultimately, if you talk to any researcher on the planet and you ask them what they need to do better science, they are, I won't say always, but pretty much always going to give you the exact same answer. I need money. I need money. Give me money. I need more equipment. I need more grad students. I need to be able to outsource this and that. The administrative fees at my university are too high. I need money. So for anyone who thinks that taking a portion of Dogecoin or of kind of crypto nonsense, I actually have gained a much better respect for a lot of the DJing community. Coming in, I was a little bit more of a Web3 purist, but I've come to understand a lot of the people who trade, and they're actually really smart people. Anyone who kind of looks down on that, I think, is kind of missing the point. So, no, I don't think we need to convince anyone. I think they need to convince themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And congrats again on the Coinbase listing on trending on the launch of Bio V2. I think the timing of all those steps was actually absolutely perfect. So well done and congrats on this. And yeah, because of that, because of Bio trending, it also brought additional exposure and eyeballs, right, from outside of DeSci investors to DeSci itself. And I think that's brilliant. And we could see a lot of buzz about around DeSci Summer, obviously because of what you guys been working on and you've been providing the public with. What other signs of revival or ripple effects are you seeing across DeSci?
To be honest with you, Tom, I'm heads down building. There is so much on my plate on a day-to-day basis. I really don't have that much time to be on Twitter. I've gotten the gist of it, and I'm sure that there are other folks on the team who can give a better answer to this. But I've got a million action items on my plate on any given day, which in and of itself is a good sign. I think I'm not looking externally, I'm looking internally. And to me, what's been the most exciting is seeing the team just kind of hum like a fine-tuned engine where marketing and tech and AI and programs and ops are all just working together in this concerto, this beautiful fashion. To me, don't get me wrong, I care about token price. Everyone cares about token price, but what I really care about is process behind the scenes. What I care about is seeing the team continuously execute, just kind of keeping the ball in the air between different groups on a day-to-day basis. And this just has that right feeling to it for the internal team right now. So I can't give you answers for externally. I can just tell you right now we're shipping and it feels good.
Absolutely. Thank you. Albert, of course, if you want to join in, please feel free to do so. And guys, just a reminder, if you've got any questions, also feel free to request to speak and I'll get you on stage. Because you know what I'm thinking? I love what you actually said about that you guys are shipping and your even personal focus on what kind of values to provide to people in DeSci and in Web3 with. And I think you're smashing it at Bio Protocol. Well, I wanted to ask you, so obviously that's kind of the Bio V2 is the next step of the DeSci evolution. And I would even go further and say revolution, right? What infrastructure upgrades or tools do you expect next? We know that there's scientific AI agents coming up. Do you think there's going to be more tokenized IP models? Do you maybe see more funding coming from communities now, or is it just opening up at the moment to a broader number of speculators, right? Because obviously, the whole spectrum of Web3 and different narratives, and the eyeballs that are turning towards DeSci, are these going to bring, I know it's, again, just a speculative conversation here, but do you think that these are going to bring those benefits to DeSci, those real world benefits?
Oh man, I have so many answers for this, and I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say. So I'll go with the ones that I know are public, or the ones that I don't think would be confidential. First and foremost, there are multiple funding pathways for anything that Bio puts out. One of them is obviously this launchpad, a lot of the support for retail, and the chance for people to get in as early adopters. But for anyone who's familiar with the VC biotech world, venture capitalists in biotech write $100 million checks. And this alludes to one of the points that Albert made earlier, where it's going to take 10 years to bring a drug to market kind of thing. And that requires some serious capital for a meaningful team of scientific experts to function over the course of a decade. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is also incredible in its own right whenever you do have a biotech VC that's coming in with a 9-figure check. So I think we have a couple of the assets. I know VitaDAO VitaFast or VitaRNA. I think it's VitaRNA is working on clinical trial infrastructure. I would tell y'all to go check out their Discord. There was just a public snapshot vote on some of the Perceptra from Cerebrum DAO, their IPT, which is now going through its initial clinical trials, and they're doing some amazing work actually collecting blood samples for biomarker data, which for the supplements market, that is just unheard of. It's funny, I was feeding in the public information from Claw, from the team, the Perceptra team, into ChatGPT, and I asked it to be a skeptical investor, right? A skeptical biotech investor, and find everything wrong with it that it could, and basically just try and nickel and dime me on valuations. And the lowest that I could possibly get ChatGPT to give was $6 million, which right now the IPT is worth, and that was knowing what is under the IPT. Right now the IPT is worth $600,000. So I think that there are a lot of things cooking, not only from the launchpad, but from a lot of the infrastructure that's been done prior. Once again, that's just a portion of it. I don't know what I'm allowed to talk to or not. I'm only saying the things that are publicly available information, but so much incredible stuff across the ecosystem, and I'm just excited to see where it goes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erik. Albert, do you have any final questions or any final thoughts?
No final questions from my side. I think Erik covered so much ground, and I actually look forward to go back to this conversation and to the recording later. A lot of exciting stuff to digest. So thank you so much, Erik, for I think this is your second Proof of DeSci, isn't it?
It might be. Yeah, it was one about knowledge graphs earlier, maybe.
You're always the go-to at Bio, it seems like, to attend these. And you do a hell of a good job at it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Albert.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you once again. And I think that's a wrap on this Proof of DeSci conversation and episode with Erik from Bio Protocol. Thank you very much, Erik and Albert, for joining. We've covered Bio V2, the evolving DeSci market, and what's ahead for builders and investors this summer and beyond. So if you enjoyed this discussion, make sure to follow Proof of DeSci on your favorite podcast platform and join the conversation in our community channels. Please go ahead and of course, follow Bio Protocol, ValiDAO, Albert, Erik. And yeah, I think that's it. Until next time, guys, keep building, keep learning, and stay curious about the future of decentralized science. Thank you so much.